My name is Adam Bean and welcome to the mid-year edition of AirHacks TV with lots of questions, at least some interesting questions. So let's start with the show. So before we start, some news. First, I performed a podcast interview or conversation with Jason Green of Whitefly and Red Hat, and we had a chat about application servers, caching, distributed caching, and clustering, so it might be interesting. What also happened is the following. So I got another room for the airhacks.com workshop, and it's going to be at December the 10th. And at December the 10th, there's going to be a micro profile and Jakarta E workshop. So what I plan to do is to show some micro profile features like metrics and configuration and whatever micro profile will be able to do in December, because I'm using a micro profile in production already on top of Java E 8 application servers. So this is another day in December. And what I also did, I recorded 2 screencasts, free screencasts on the microservice channel about microprofile metrics and exposing microprofile metrics to Prometheus. So I published it today, and I will blog about that next week. Okay, so these were the announcements, and let's start with the topics. So the first question is from SCRM-Tray91. So hello again. He asks, we are using Git as a versioning control, JFrog, Artifactory or Nexus, TeamCity, Yotrack, and we decided to change our flow a little bit, so we got a few questions. By the way, I will read the questions fully. Why? Because I plan to publish this show as audio only as well. So, how you recommend to do versioning for? Internal build like RC, release candidate, snapshot for testing, test server or internal developer server. Production build from master branch to go customers for deploy on production server. Also some project also contains clients for web service access, which we include in other projects. So I did it recently for a couple of companies. So what I used was Jenkins pipeline as code, so the Jenkins file. And how it worked was we implemented a hook for GitHub or Bitbucket. Or GitLab really depends on the environment, and on each commit the project was built. Now what we also did, there was one if-else switch. So there was distinction between a just developer build and release build. So what happened on developer build? So the build was just all the tests were performed, and which tests? Unit tests, integration tests, system tests. If you're interested in this, check out, I think the URI is java.ee-testing.com. So there's a whole workshop about that. And this workshop comprises the tests, but not the automation part. It's just how to write tests, integration tests, and system tests, stuff like that. So how many episodes there are? 48 episodes. Also performance tests. And this is exactly what you do in the projects. And so in case there is a release build in the Jenkins file, there is, I think it's called read maven pom this method, and it reads the pom, and I extract the version and use the version to create a tag in Git, and also tag the Docker image. So the whole thing, so microservice is packaged and pushed to Docker. And so the only difference between internal build and release build is whether there is a tag or not. The pipeline is exactly the same. So what is your practice in projects? So we automate. I automate whatever I can with Jenkins. What we did even. So the projects. It is even possible to have, if you are in the Java E environment, we even have one Jenkins file for all projects. So with a convention of a configuration, you can absolutely do this. Why? Because if you know that the name of the microservice is, let's say, workshops, then you also know that the system tests is workshops-st. So if you know the convention, you can configure or you can create the pipeline, a generic pipeline for multiple projects. How do I make organized tags on Git for release, snapshot, and so forth? So so on each commit, the thing is built, and on build there are no major releases or no tags. So there's just a snapshot dependencies. And if there is a release build, there is no snapshot. And in the past, I used Maven release plugin for microservices in Java 8. This is actually not needed, because the only thing what happens is you have to increase the version in the POM. And what you don't have to do is, for instance, you don't have to upload the war to Artifactory or Nexus, because we already have the binary image in Docker. Do you use different? The question number 4: do you use different branches for production and testing? Yes, locally probably, but usually I only have. So what I do is I just, it really depends on the project. In some project, we only have master branch, for instance. So that's the only thing we have. And whether we have branches or not, it really depends on the release strategy. If the release strategy is like, evergreen browsers, where we just push it to production, there is no branching. But if we have, formal releases, which are usually defined by the marketing department, then you need, branches to hold back the features. Otherwise, you will see all the features up front, which is probably not wished. But the trend is going exactly towards, I would say, let's call it continuous releasing without holding back features. Can you describe your workflow with your projects, making test build, making release build, Git tagging, versioning? Oh, now I know what you mean by test build and release build. So we have several stages usually. So in my recent project, we used OpenShift. It's like a private cloud. And we had one OpenShift namespace, or it could be Kubernetes namespace, which was the test stage or development stage. And if you build something successfully, you saw that in the test stage. Now, release build would mean it is available in the Docker registry of the test environment, and you can promote it to the next environment. But this is like user action. So sometimes it happens automatically, and sometimes it just is caused by with a button, human interaction. So if someone says, okay, I would like to have this build to be promoted, it just pulls from the Docker registry from the test environment and promotes that to the integration environment. And the same is true for production as well. The next thing is, the next question, number 6, is, do you use auto-deploy features when production build is ready to release? On Docker, yes, because it really does not matter. So we have one application server per war, and this auto-deploy is usually easier. And why it doesn't matter? Because we run the system tests as well. So it just runs, it deploys once and never again. I would still prefer CLI, but if you go to my Docklands projects in GitHub, Docklands, let's say Docklands Adam Bean on GitHub, and search, for instance, for what's the recent server Payara 5 Docker file, you will see that what I'm actually doing is somewhere, where is it? Install dir, the domain, and somewhere there should be deploy dir. Deployment dir is install dir and deploy. And what happens then in your microservice, I would just copy the war to here, and then it's going to be deployed on Payara. CLI would be nicer because I would get immediate feedback. But with this approach, I can deploy on Payara, Whitefly, Tommy, whatever, because all the application server says deploy there. If I would use the CLI, unfortunately, deployment API is not standardized in Java EE. So there was one API back then, but it's deprecated or is no more available. And since then, I'm just, I would have to provide command line interface for all application servers. So if you have the choice, use CLI, Jabo CLI as admin in Payara, and this auto deploy works well in production in several projects. Particular startups are using this. If we have, for instance, in one project we use OpenShift Builder, and it comes with CLI. Okay, now, is it possible to somehow automate the process? Absolutely. So in my projects, whatever I said right now is absolutely automated. So what you will have to do is to push your changes. Then you will kick in the, how it's called, test build. Then the test build would be started. If you would like to promote the build, you will have to go to Jenkins and say there is a parameterized build, and you will have to check a box and say this is a release build. And what will happen then? It will tag everything after successful tests and push the image to a registry, and it will be ready for promotion. And another Jenkins pipeline will pull the image, create the environment in integration stage, and just run it. Actually, we do it on the airhacks.com workshop at Munich Airport if you're interested in it. Okay, and the versioning scheme, I use Semver. This is what I prefer, Semver. Semantic versioning. This is the scheme. Why? Because if there is a standard, just take it. Nice. Thank you. Veneto asked me, "Hello Adam, I really like Primefaces and now I am starting to use Spring Boot, and I would really regret losing Primefaces in favor of Spring MVC. I have tried at little join phases, they nicely sorts out all the dependencies for you, and it seems to work fine. What are your thoughts on join phases? What would you recommend me to do? Throw away Primefaces and use Spring MVC and avoid mixing the two worlds. Thank you so much." So first, I have to admit, I have almost no Spring Boot experience. So my experience was last year, there was a task force. So I helped them to make Spring Boot work again. And this was actually a funny story. They asked me for Java EE support because they thought that Spring Boot is Java EE or an application server, which it kind is. And I came and I saw Spring Boot. And because I didn't have the Spring Boot environment on my machine, I used Whitefly or Payara, I don't even remember. And they asked me why it's so quick, the deployment. I say, yeah, because this is a kind of Spring Boot, but it isn't. It's called Java EE. But both environments were very similar. So I was able to help them. And right now I also help a project with Spring Boot, but without having too much experience with Spring Boot. But what you have to know is following. The Primefaces is based on Faces servlet. And Spring Boot, there are multiple profiles, but if you have Jetty or Tomcat, it is perfectly fine to run Primefaces on it. And I have no production experience with join faces, but I'm really happy with Primefaces. So I have to admit, no idea whether join faces is fine or not. And I never mixed Primefaces with Spring MVC. And I don't think you have to give up Primefaces if you are using Spring Boot. But I have to admit, I have no real project experience with Spring Boot. I get lots of project requests, but everyone asks me about Java EE. So strange world. Okay. Now, Golok asked me, "Hello, I can't find how to upload a file from a multi-form part using only JAX-RS on standard Java 7 API. Now, there are extensions from Jersey, REST Easy, etc., but they are not portable between implementation servers." This is true. Multi-part form is not part of JAX-RS, so you will have to use the extensions. But accidentally, what I did actually last week to a client, I wrote a file upload microservice for legacy integration of an app. It's actually a microservice and is based on Java 8 actually. And what you perfectly can do, you see this put this meter, it comes from microprofile. It's actually code we released. And there is a method write file. This is files is the resource, and put this is the file name, and I just accept input stream. So another microservice just streams the file to this microservice. This is, of course, not multi-part, but this is what I usually use for file upload. This multi-part thing is file upload from a parser, from a browser. So if you click, the file upload button, so this is different. Okay, so this is what I did last week with metrics and microprofile metered, which might be interesting to you, and some configuration for Docker. Yes, so you're right. This multi-part is not standardized, but you don't have to use multi-part. And if you have to use the extensions. And there was even in the past we used Jakarta Commons file upload. But I would say if you know you are just the whole project will run on for the project lifetime, you will use a single server. I would rather use REST Easy or JAX-RS extensions. So P2Mal asked me, hello Adam, what are your thoughts on MVC 1.0? So my thoughts are really nice. So I really like this technology, Model View Controller 1.0. Any alternatives for it, or should I just use servlets with JSPs? Actually, in one of my projects, we just use JSPs to pre-render web components. So and servlets with JSPs. So you have already MVC with JSPs. And I would say 10 years ago, I delivered some courses. Now as well, but 10 years ago, courses about presentation layer. And what I did, I recreated struts from scratch to show how it works, and this is fairly easy to do this. So we had servlet which forwarded this, I think it's called request dispatcher, and forwarded the stuff to JSPs. So if you are able with a few lines of code to create a servlet with JSPs, which serves your need, I will go with that. It's just nothing will beat that, It will be portable and simple and could be maintained by you, but you shouldn't write, recreate MVC from scratch. So if the code is simple, a few lines of code in a servlet, then go with your own invention. So and then P2Mal proceeds. I'm seeking a clean JAX-RS API that returns templates with pre-populated model vanilla.js. Exactly what I did. And I used vanilla JSPs because there are already iterations and stuff like that. We'll do the rest maybe with web components. Perfect choice, web components. MVC 1.0 seems to provide all that, but its future is unclear. Yeah, future is unclear. This is true, but I don't think it will die. So would use in a project with expected lifetime over 5 years. I don't think MVC 1.0 will die in 5 years. So what you could do, you could check out the code and take a look how complex it is and then decide. And hence you are already asking that question, which is well thought through and intelligent question actually. Then it's probably, what they are doing. Then I would just write a proof of concept, half a day, create a servlet with JSPs and see how complex it is. And if it is clean and understandable, ask your colleagues, you are getting this, what I did. If they say yes, simple code, then go with your own invention. Yeah. GSF or SPA's architecture is not an option. Yes. Okay. Now, Mr. 7 asked me, hello, I'm a fan of Primefaces too. It allowed to build nice-looking and modern web apps without JS, so JavaScript scripts. I use Primefaces on Whitefly and every time pack Primefaces jar into a WAR file. Yes, this is what so you are perfectly trendy. Why? Because you created your own Uber jar or Fed jar, so you should be proud of it. I'm of course kidding. It abused that is not good idea. So I think what he means is I think it's not a good idea. So could you explain how to use Primefaces on Whitefly as module? Probably it require more configuration. So I never tried it, but it should actually work. So the idea is to drop in Primefaces as a dependency to Whitefly as a module, and then you don't have to redeploy it every time with WAR. So what you could try first is take a look on Whitefly Swarm and so-called hollow hollow jars. So what is it? So you could create your own whitefly swarm distribution with Primefaces, but keep your war separate. So you have one jar whitefly with Primefaces. It's called hollow jar. And then the next jar or war is your war. So I would just take a look at that. So I have no time right now to try it, but it should work. What we also did in the past, we created whitefly modules for legacy security login module, something like this, and it worked well. And I think Primefaces might also work because at the end of the day, it's just a servlet extension. So it actually should work. And I will try it in your case because your war is going to be thinner and deployment faster. Okay, now next question. Aliatir asked me, or writes, "Hi Adam, I started learning Java and I have a question regarding JAX-RS and EJB. I saw a lot of examples that annotate the resource with stateless or singleton, or sometimes request scoped or application scoped. So I also saw everything. And I wanted to know if you can help me to understand in which cases the one is preferred over the other." So what you can do, you could use, for instance, stateless or singleton. So what's the difference between stateless and singleton? So stateless is like a singleton, but is pooled. And pooled means if you have 5 transactions going on, 5 parallel transactions, you get 5 instances of EJBs, and this will usually result in slightly better scalability than the singleton. Why? Because the invocation is going to be a little bit more parallel. So in regular projects, it really does not matter. So this is in singleton, and at singleton, you have to make a difference. Is it in javax.inject singleton or javax.ejb singleton? So the inject singleton behaves like application scoped, and javax@ejb singleton, it just locks the instance. So the ejb singleton is only able to process one thread at a time. This javax.inject singleton and application scoped are similar. They can process multiple threads at the same time in the same instance. So you have to be careful what you are doing. Now, what's left over is request scoped. And what you can do with JAX-RS is you can inject with context, for instance, params, headers, and stuff like that. So if you inject them as attributes or fields, what can happen with singleton is that they are not switched per request. So what you could do in this particular case is to use request scoped so that all the fields are going to be re-injected. This is of course slower, but this is how it works. So what I usually do, I prefer stateless over the others because usually you get more monitoring information from application servers. And stateless also starts transaction earlier. But if you know what you are doing, application scope is also fine. Okay. Yeah, this is what I'm doing. So do I need to make everything inside the resource thread safe with singleton? Depends which singleton. So if you are using, again, javax.inject singleton, yes. With EJB, no. But with EJB singleton is a bottleneck. Only one thread at a time is able to access your singleton. So if you have a resource, usually the resource has no state. So nothing can happen with concurrency. Okay. On another topic, I purchased most of your Java courses. So thank you for purchasing. And they are great. Please make more. I'm thinking about that. So what I will do next is provide some web courses as well, because I get lots of requests about that. And do you have any video tutorial on real-world CI using Jenkins, Maven, or Git? The testing is the closest, but I think I should record something with CI and Jenkins, so it could work as well, a short tutorial. But right now I'm working on another SPA tutorial and web tutorial. Okay, thank you for buying, and thank you for watching my stuff. So, Musali says, "Hi Adam. Are view logging and monitoring questions for Java 7 or 8 greenfield project consisting of several related apps?" Now, question number 1. Planning to have centralized logging and to log events using a structured format, JSON. Is Java utils logging sufficient for this? Would need to at least create a JSON formatter, or would it be better to use logging framework like Log4j or other, Log4j2 or other? So the funny story is in one of my projects we use OpenShift and we use system out println, so not even Log4j to write the logs because it's aggregated behind the scenes. So what you could do, of course, with Java 8 or 7, you can inject your own interface called Logger, and behind the interface you can implement whatever you like. It's just like a two-liner. And using a JSON formatter, yeah, you could write with JSONP or create a JSON formatter for Java util logging as well. But just try system out println first. And if you are in cloud native environment, if not Java util logging, this is what I would start with because there is no external dependency needed. And Log4j2 is also an interesting alternative. So what I also did in projects, this is what you are mentioning in the question number 2, I also logged directly to Elasticsearch. For instance, instead of writing file to a Docker container first, then read the file again and write it to a central location, I just send it to a central location, not the file rather than the event. You could also use database, just write directly to database. The question is always, what is log? How logs are defined in your projects? Are logs like audits or just additional diagnostic data? If it's just optional diagnostic data, it doesn't have to be transactional. I would just write to a central location in the simplest possible format. You could evaluate WebSockets. I used REST, for instance. We even implemented at the last in 2017, the last airhacks.com workshop, a direct, not a Panda. We just wrote a JAX-RS client which directly logged everything to Elasticsearch. Now, next question number 2. It looks like separate tool stacks are often used for logging and monitoring. For example, Elasticsearch and Kibana for log data and Prometheus Grafana for metrics data. Is this the best practice? I think it is. And the reason why it is Prometheus and Grafana. So what Prometheus is time series data. So what Prometheus is about is to compute statistics. So what what Prometheus does is it gathers let's say numbers and is able to do something with the numbers. And if the number repeats several times, it just skips and it knows behind the scenes, okay, I saw now 5 times 5, so I just able to compress that. So Prometheus is very efficient with the compression, and this is time series database. And Grafana uses Prometheus as a data source. And Elasticsearch and Kibana is slightly different. So Elasticsearch is a database, a full text search database, and it works like if you are writing logs to Elasticsearch, you would usually tag the logs with different tags, metadata, and then you can search for these tags. And Kibana is better to visualize that. So Kibana is more or less like better to visualize, let's say, text data and tags, and Grafana uses Prometheus as a data source and is able to create really nice charts and diagrams. Or is there a good solution that supports storage and visualization for both logs and metrics data? I don't think so, because again, in Prometheus, I would rather gather business metrics, how often a video course was bought, how many fraud attempts there were, and what are the most popular courses. And Elasticsearch and Kibana I would use for searching for stack traces, problems, and it's complete different use case, I would say. And by the way, I consistently confuse Kibana and Grafana, so you'll be really cautious if I mention Grafana or Kibana, because I confuse both. And we did also in the last December workshop at airhacks.com, so we played a little bit with Grafana and Kibana. Okay, I was thinking about having apps automatically emit matrix data to some destination. This is actually what happens here, this metered here. And it exposes matrix just to write the file. Please take a look at the screencasts from the two free screencasts I published today to the microservices. Java EE microservices. So this is a paid workshop, but there is a bonus material, bonus features. They are completely free. Exposing business metrics and fetching metrics with Prometheus. So these two free screencasts. And what I did in the screencasts, I did exactly what you are asking for. I'm emitting business metrics and gathering the metrics with Prometheus. So I was thinking about having apps automatically emit metrics data to some destination, beginning on startup and continuing entire time app is running. Do you see downside to this approach? No, this is what you should do, and I always do. If this is done, would you recommend that app metrics also be made available through REST endpoints? Absolutely. Because this is the easiest way, to get the data. And with microprofile, you get them as a Prometheus format or JSON. So you can just say I'm accept : application JSON. Okay, now next question. Mr. Rinkevich asked me, have you tried WebAssembly? Could it be the future? What is WebAssembly? So WebAssembly is like a bytecode for the browser. And all the programming languages are supposed to be compiled into WebAssembly. And the JavaScript virtual machine in a browser will interpret the WebAssembly. And could it be the future? It could be, but it's very limited right now. So there is no concurrency, no DOM access and stuff like that. So, but right now, I thought about integration of legacy resources. For instance, if you have some code written in C, encoders, compressors, whatever, it is fairly easy to convert the algorithms to WebAssembly. So right now, it is more or less an integration feature. And in long term, it could become the future. The problem, what happens right now is the JavaScript ES6 becomes, or ES7 becomes more and more like Java. So it is actually a nice language. Meanwhile, so all this strange stuff is still available, but you don't have to use it. So actually, there is no reason to get rid of the modern JavaScript to introduce another language. So, but what could happen that we get cross compilers. There is already one C# to WebAssembly, I think. C# WebAssembly. And I think there is one cross compiler between C# and WebAssembly, so you could use that. In my eyes, I would rather use vanilla JavaScript. So this WebAssembly makes web a more viable platform because you have one more option to integrate, your native code with web. And I don't think it will completely replace ES6, let's say, in the next 5 years. So it's my opinion. So I will just refresh and see. So no questions. And what's here? There is no sound, but the sound is actually should be available. Okay. So I think we are done. I would say thank you a lot for watching and for all the questions. And see you next month. And see you, of course, at airhacks.io. If you like, listen to the podcast. I will probably publish this Airhacks TV show also as Airhacks FM and even at conferences. So thank you for watching and bye.